Coming up on The Sporting Chef.
Welcome to The Sporting Chef. Today on the show, I'm back in the old neighborhood. But it's not just me. I've also got Susie Jimenez, Stacy Harris, Josh McGuire, Lisa Freeman, C-Dub, and good old Buddy. All right, so I grew up in Virginia, and my buddy Steve Rubio and I would hunt these woods, not necessarily these woods. We're in West Virginia, and I'm here shooting a dead meat show. We'll talk a little bit about dead meat later, but if you haven't seen dead meat, we want you to. We really have a good time there. We're in Marlinton, West Virginia for the Roadkill Festival. What, you haven't been? So while we were here, we ran into some folks who like to hunt bear, and they've got the most incredible pack of dogs hunting the bear, and we were fortunate enough to get a bear roast. You'll have to find out a lot more about that on the Dead Meat Show, but if you've never cooked bear, I've had good bear, and I've had some bad bear. One thing about bear that you have to remember, and I'm just making a very simple bear stew, is that you want to cook your bear all the way through. There is a danger of trichinosis in the wild bear as opposed to the domestic bear that you get at the grocery store. And while I get this thing started here, I want you to check out my buddy, Susie Jimenez, our, what does she call it? She's gonna spice it up. Watch Susie.
Who doesn't love fried rice, right? I know I do. But again, ladies, I know that you know this, and even you men, like, let's get it together. You can't have that many carbs all the time. So I am making broccoli rice. You're gonna grab the head, and like, if you think about it, this really can be rice, right? And then you can still keep chopping the stem so that you have vegetables for this fried rice. You're just gonna shave it nice and thin. See, once you get all this good rice out of the way, you can still use this part. Okay, we're gonna get our skillet on a high heat, a little bit of oil, just a nice touch at the very beginning. Now, I know that you guys like to go to town. You guys go hunt, and you're like, what do we do with our meat? And you start grinding the crap out of everything, which is totally fine, right? But then what do you do with all this ground stuff? Well, this is where you use this. But, you know, do me a favor, guys. You guys don't have to grind everything. And while we're cooking this, we're gonna add the carrots, which are a little more heartier. We're gonna add scallions, garlic, and jalapenos to this mixture. I love a lot of garlic in mine. Now, while this is cooking off, I want to show you guys something. Grab a spoon, and you're just gonna peel it back like this. Once you do that, we're just gonna cut a little bit of this off. And I like to be able to bite into my ginger and get nice big chunks out of it. It almost opens up my eyes a little bit more. Add a little bit of ginger to this. Okay, now we're gonna add our broccoli, rice. We're gonna cut this off. Now, it is fried rice, so this is where we're gonna add a little more oil to it. We're gonna throw our egg in there. And I got 2 eggs in there. Okay, so once we get the egg in there, we're gonna add a little bit of soy sauce. And I always like to add a little bit of it before I add the spinach to incorporate it, because once you add the spinach to it, it's done. Okay, guys, I did this from A to Z. There was nothing that was pre-cooked or anything, so you can do this in like 5 seconds with all your leftovers. See, and then I am gonna put this in an awesome little Chinese box and serve it with little chopsticks. You guys are all set. We'll see you guys next time for some more awesome ideas on how to stay away from the starch and eat more veggies. See you guys next time.
All right, right here. This is a bear shoulder roast. Now, I got it started because with any kind of tough sinewy meat, whether it's a bear shoulder roast or a deer shoulder roast or a wild pig, it's gonna take a long time to get these things tender. And I hope I've allowed enough time. Let me just show you. Right now, this, ouch, it's starting to break up, and it's been about probably 2 hours. This is just in wild game stock and a little coffee. The coffee's going to give it kind of a bitter flavor, but not enough. The wild game stock's going to add a little bit of salt, a little bit of flavor. But the key component here is I don't start putting vegetables in until this starts to soften up enough and break up enough. This is one of those low and slow dishes. But first, I want you to check out Stacy Lynn. She's our favorite, Stacy Lynn Harris now.
Hey everybody, today I am making a homemade pizza. Y'all, do not walk away. It's only going to take 15 minutes for you from beginning to end to make this. I rolled the dough. Look at how beautiful this is. I'm going to put it right down in my skillet. Straighten up a little bit. And then I like the edges to go up just a little bit around the 8-inch skillet. So you can make this about 8 inches. All right, and then I'm gonna poke some holes right in the top of the crust. Once you've got enough holes in it, just let it kind of sit here for a minute to get done on the bottom. I've still got my wild boar meat going. Okay, it's time to flip the pizza. Look at that. And now it's time for the toppings. So I am going to put half of the Parmesan cheese on one side. I think I'll do, I don't know, you know what? I'm gonna do all the Parmesan cheese on the whole thing, and then I'm gonna add goat cheese to just part of it. I'm gonna put the tomatoes on, and then I'm gonna put the meat. Okay, I'm gonna put the basil, and then I'm gonna top it with crumble a little bit of goat cheese on here. Now I'm gonna put a lid on the top of this and let that steam for just about another minute, minute and a half, and we're gonna be finished. All right, our pizza is ready.
Coming up, Josh McGuire is going to show you his dead meat squirrel recipe right here on The Sporting Chef. Welcome back to The Sporting Chef. I'm Scott Leysath. I'm cooking a bear stew. And as a reminder, if you don't happen to have a bear in the freezer, this works with any hunk of meat, wild or domestic. The tougher cuts, like shoulder roasts, cube it up, chop it up, let the slow, moist heat do the job. This is just starting to tender up, so the first thing I want to add is some carrots and celery and onions, and that's going to start to add a little bit of flavor. I also have some game sausage that I fished out of the freezer that I'm going to add to it. I mean, sausage can't be all that bad, right? Celery, carrot, onion. I've also got some whole garlic cloves. Give that a stir. Once you start throwing the vegetables in, I want to get them a little bit brown, and then I'll add some more of my game stock over here. Now this next guy is the resident dead meat coon cooker, whipping up a little squirrel surprise. Here's Josh McGuire.
Thanks, Scott. Today, guys, we're cooking squirrel. My son and I went out, so we only ended up with one squirrel today. One measly squirrel. What I did was put it in the Instant Pot. You could do the same thing in a slow cooker. I quartered the squirrel. I put it in there with a cup of broth. Put the quarters right in the Instant Pot and poured the broth over it, and that's what we ended up with. Which isn't bad. I mean, that's not terrible, but we wanted to do something with squirrel. So we're gonna add a deer heart that I had in the fridge. We've got Conecuh sausage for some more protein, and we've got some uncured bacon. And all this is going in Cajun dirty rice. I'm gonna let the bacon cook all the way down and get crispy. Put the Conecuh sausage in and got that browned. And then we did celery. I put in one red bell pepper that's been diced and one yellow onion and a pack of mushrooms, just white sliced mushrooms. And we've let all that cook down with some garlic for about 7 minutes. And now we're gonna finish it up and put the lid on. So I'm gonna dump in 2 cups of rice, jasmine rice. I've got Cajun seasoning, 2 bay leaves, and some ground thyme. That's gonna go in. And the star of the show, the poor little squirrel. That's going in. 4 cups of stock and 1 cup of water. I'll stir it all up and I'm gonna bring it to a boil. And once I've got it to a boil, I'm gonna put the lid on for 30 minutes and we're gonna turn it down to a simmer. Okay, so I melted about 2 tablespoons of butter in this cast iron pan. Got it good and hot. And I was lucky enough a couple days ago to shoot a doe, and I kept the heart, and it was in my fridge waiting on this opportunity right here. So this was a good chance to use it since we only shot 1 squirrel and didn't have enough protein to really go in the dish. Our dirty rice is done. I'm gonna add this deer heart to it and stir it up, and we're ready to eat. I've got some garnish here. I'm gonna add a little goat cheese. You don't have to do that. I like goat cheese. I'm gonna add some green onions to it and kick it up a notch with a little Cajun campfire high mountain seasoning. So here we go, guys. We've got the dirty squirrels, what we're gonna call it. We've added Tennessee venison heart, Alabama Conecuh sausage, and of course you got one Alabama squirrel in there. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Here you go, Scott.
As I mentioned at the top of the show, here in West Virginia, as a kid I hunted the George Washington National Forest, Thomas Jefferson, all of that area there. But anyway, it's gorgeous here. West Virginia, if you haven't been to the Appalachians, the Blue Ridge, it's slap dead gorgeous. I brought my wife out here one year to show her the fall colors, which are just now starting behind me here. And she grew up in California, right at the base of the Sierras near Yosemite. And she came out and she said, okay, where are the mountains? Because they're a little smaller here. However, they're absolutely gorgeous. I would grouse hunt, turkey hunt, deer hunt here. Beautiful area. The stew is doing its thing. My next guest, Lisa Freeman. Lisa has been on the Dead Meat Show. She's been on Sporting Chef shows and Hunt Fish Cook shows. Lisa, here's Lisa Freeman right now.
Hey Scott, this is what we're going to do here today in the kitchen. We have some wild caught Alaskan king salmon, and I have a beautiful fillet here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with a little bit of olive oil on it. I want to coat it nicely. I'm going to oil that nicely, and then I'm just going to put a little bit of salt. I use kosher salt, so I have a pan back here, and I'm actually going to put just a little bit of olive oil in it for the base of my sauce. So I'm going to put this into the pan. Want to hear that sizzle? We have some nice cooking going on the outside, and I don't want to overcook this. I still want to see some red in the center to make sure it's going to be cooked properly. Okay, so it's ready to flip. Minus the splatter. So this is ready, so I'm going to go ahead and put it on a plate to reserve. And then I'm going to add just a little bit more extra virgin California olive oil. I'm going to toss in some shallots, a little bit of white wine. And I'm going to reduce that down just a little bit. I want to go ahead and capture some of that flavor off the bottom of the pan. So I'm going to go ahead and scrape that up while it's reducing, and it'll bring all the flavor up into the beginning of the sauce. And I'm going to add a little bit of fresh lemon juice into the pan, and I'm going to continue reducing it. And then I'm also going to use a little bit of fresh orange juice. I want a little bit of citrus in this dish as well. And then we always here at the Gypsy Bistro, we always have a house-made, homemade chicken stock going. So I'm going to add just a little bit of that into it. Just a little bit. It adds depth and richness. And then I have some apricot preserve that we've actually made ahead of time here at the Gypsy Bistro. Maybe a little bit of crushed red pepper flake. So we'll put that in there. So we're going to go back to the salmon. It stayed nice and warm. So I have a nice whipped potato to serve it with. Some sauteed squash. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the sauce on the salmon. And you just need enough to glaze it. A little bit of parsley for color. And there you are. This is an apricot preserve glazed salmon from the Gypsy Bistro.
Coming up next, the bear stew should be ready. Also with C-Dub and Buddy. Up ahead on the Sporting Chef. So I can tell that my bear stew, my bear shoulder meat is starting to tender up. So I'm going to add some potatoes. And these are local potatoes. Went to a farmer's market nearby. See, these aren't just your regular potatoes. They've got some nice color to them. And I also have some sausage. This is wild turkey sausage from the freezer. Here is just some canned diced tomato. Some more game stock, and I'm going to bring this up to a boil. It's going to take about 10 or 12 minutes for these potatoes to get soft. Put the lid on, and while I'm doing that, I want you to check out another guy who is no stranger to cast iron. C-Dub has been on the Sporting Chef show since day one. We can't do it without him. C-Dub, what you got?
People who spend their life out in the woods, like I did as a game warden for 22 years, oftentimes you don't have time to make a big fancy meal. You want something quick, nutritious, and tasty. And an old game warden buddy of mine, Tony Latham, we called him Laser, was his nickname. This was Tony's favorite supper. We're gonna start out with a pound of our elk burger, and we're just gonna squeeze that out of the bag, and we're gonna brown that. You don't often think of hamburger as stew meat, but it works great. We've got our elk burger browned. We're gonna add the rest of our ingredients, and I've got a little bit of chopped garlic here. A stew is a stew. You could put anything in it you wanted. Let me get my onions open, and they're gonna go in. These potatoes were prepped early this morning, and what I did when we sliced those up, we put them in a salt water bath, you know, a bowl of water with about 3 tablespoons of salt for a few minutes, and they'll stay nice and white all day long. So those are gonna go in. Or how about a little salt and a lot of pepper. Pepper shakers never go quite fast enough for me. And Tony, I never did understand him. This recipe, he says it's even better instead of beef bouillon using a dark beer. But you know, the best dark beer I ever had wasn't poured in the stew, it was poured in the cook. So we're gonna add our other can of beef broth, and we're just gonna do this stovetop. We could do it over a campfire, over charcoal, and we're gonna have Tony Latham's Laser stew. And so rather than a dark beer in the stew, we're gonna pour a cheap beer into the cook. We're gonna take some slices of Swiss cheese. We're gonna set on there to melt. Here's our Laser stew, simple, tasty, and a great meal at the end of the day. And we didn't have a whole lot of time in it, and we don't have many dishes to do either. So great for the outdoors.
C-Dub is the real deal. Now my stew, I checked it. I'm gonna add a little bit more seasoning here. But you know what, I put some coffee in here and I'm tasting no coffee, which is a little disappointing. This is some chili seasoning that I started with. High Mountain chili seasoning. I put some High Mountain venison rub, and I put this in when I was seasoning the meat at first, but I'm gonna add a little bit more because I tasted it and it needs a little flavor. And what's cool about the High Mountain stuff is it doesn't have a whole lot of salt. I'm going to liberally put on a little of the Italian seasoning, and there's some of that in there too, but I like this Italian seasoning. No salt, great flavor. All right, the guy that's been on our show since day one, I met him on the Dead Meat Show where we cooked armadillo, jackrabbit, let's see, catfish, raccoon, and alligator gar. Sound pretty good? Here's Buddy.
The other day I was walking with a wife in a grocery store. We saw some of this Hatch green chili enchilada sauce. We was at the fish camp and I started putting chicken in there and fish and whatnot. Now I've cooked down the sauce, and we have some Mexican squash called calabaza. I also cut up some celery and yellow bell pepper. I'm gonna put this catfish in there, and what you wanna do is make sure you, whatever kind of fish you use, that you squeeze all the water out of it real good. I'm gonna cook this on the stovetop for a while. You know, whenever you're at them fish camps and hunting camps and whatnot, you always got busted up chips for your dip. Well, I'm gonna end up putting those chips on top of this and baking it. The only thing that I added to that canned sauce was some lime juice, and now I put some of this High Mountain seasoning, chili seasoning on top of it. And it just makes for a really unusual casserole. I hope everybody tries it because I know you'll like it as much as I did.
Next up, a little bit more West Virginia and bear stew right here on The Sporting Chef. So if you've never been to West Virginia, if you live on the western side of the country like I do, and you've not experienced the West Virginia area, it's absolutely beautiful here. You know, when I come back here, I'm reminded of what it was like when I was a kid here. grouse hunting, turkey hunting, driving through the woods in my old Scout, the Scout 800B, not the Scout 2, the older one. Love it here. And you know, it's a relatively inexpensive place to hang out. If you come to West Virginia, go to Charleston, West Virginia, Marlinton, West Virginia every September for the Roadkill Cook-Off, the Roadkill and Harvest Festival. All right, this is my bear stew. You won't find bear stew recipe on the sportingchef.com website. You saw what we did here. You get a tougher cut of meat and you brown it. Then you're gonna braise it in a little bit of liquid, low heat. And once it starts to soften up, then you add your vegetables. It smells really good. It smells just like West Virginia here on the Sporting Chef set today. And special thanks again to all the folks who helped out on the show today. Susie, Stacy, Josh, Lisa, C-Dub, and as always, Buddy. And of course, the sponsors that make it possible for us to be here every week. And you'll notice that we're not going to beat you over the head with the sponsors because they don't want that. They just want you to know that they've got some great products, and these are products that I use all the time. Check out sportingchef.com. Check us out on our newsletter. I'm Scott Leysath, the Sporting Chef. We'll see you next time right here, not on your phone, right here.